Hey folks, this is Steve with Nonprofit Ally, and today we're going to talk about the grant writing process. Not to be confused with grant writing, the actual writing of the grant. This is not a how to write a grant. That's for another video, another topic later. But today we're just going to talk about the process of writing a grant, because in many ways, being prepared and following a process when you write a grant is going to allow you to just be more successful in getting your grants. So in some ways, it can be looked at like planning your grants. Now, one thing before we start is to realize that grant writing, if we go through the process, we're going to talk, it's somewhat technical, but you have to realize that grant writing is not just technical, it's not just technical writing, but it's also creative writing. So you can use a little bit of creativity, storytelling, images, video, if it's appropriate, when you are using your grant writing to provide extra resources for whatever agency it is that you're applying to. So let's go ahead and go through this process. So these are the steps I would do if I were writing a grant. The very first thing I would do is I'd start with research, right? So you always want to make sure that you know who you're applying to. You make sure that you meet their criteria. You're researching your grant. Who am I going to apply to? When is it due? How much money are they offering for their grant? Who have they granted to in the past? That's always very important. So you can go on their website and you can see if they've granted money to different organizations than yours, or if any of those organizations are similar to yours. The more similar, quite possibly, the more likely they're going to be to donate to your, or not donate, but grant your organization money. Outside of finding out who they've granted to and the amount of money they're going to be willing to grant out, is giving yourself enough time ahead of time when you start your research to know that it can take 6 weeks to 3 months to get a grant written. So make sure that when you're applying for your grant that it's not due in 2 weeks, because it's possible you can write a grant that quickly and you could succeed, but don't put that added pressure on you. Make sure that you have plenty of time to write the grant, because outside of grant writing, we all have multiple other jobs that we are doing when we're running our nonprofits. And the other tip I'd give you on this when you're doing the research phase, so this is phase one, step one, right? So number one, research, is I would go ahead and call the organization. In many times when you're looking at the applications, you're online and you're seeing that you meet the criteria and that the application's due in 3 months and it's $50,000 and they've granted the people like you, I'd go ahead and give them a call. And I would talk to, a lot of times they have the person to talk to call on your grant application or somewhere on the website. And I just ask that person, hey, I'm from this organization, introduce yourself. Let them get to know you a little bit, tell them that you're thinking about applying, and see if they have any suggestions or ideas on what they're looking for in the grant. And you'll be surprised that the amount of tips that people will give you, or things they'll say like, don't do this, be sure to do this. Because they're grantors, they want to give you money, and they love having applications, and they want to see you succeed. So they're going to give you the best advice. So don't be afraid to call them, even in the research phase, before whether you've even decided to apply to them or not. Give them a call and make that connection, because then when your grant does show up on their desk, they'll remember, oh yeah, that's that person I talked to from XYZ agency. Okay, so let's say you've picked them. And the other thing to do is pick 2 or 3 to apply to. So you're doing this research phase, you need $50,000 for your project or your program or whatever. Pick 2 or 3 to pick from, because to apply to. Probably not too much more than that, because you're just making more work for yourself. And if you just apply to one, you could still get it, but hedge your bets. 2 or 3 applications, that's okay to apply to multiple agencies at the same time. Now, the next thing you want to do is, once you've decided who you're going to apply to, you've done the research, you know where you're going, get those applications in your hand and spend a lot of time reviewing the application. What I mean by that is read the application 2, 3, half a dozen times. What are they looking for, right? So go through each question, get an idea in your head what they're looking for, what questions they're asking. Make sure you meet the criteria. Make a note of any outside materials you may need. Outside, maybe you need a budget, maybe you need letters of support. There's all sorts of materials, and we'll go over that in 1 second, that you may need, but make a note of that as you review so you get an idea of just how long it's going to take you to get all your ducks in a row for this application. Give yourself time to, once you're reviewing it, give yourself time to formulate the differences in the questions that they're going to be asking. And we'll talk a little bit about that when we get to step 4. But right now, step 2, get that application and review it. Right? Review it, read it over several times. Now, stage 3, or step 3 in this process is, well, gather your documents, right? So you've gone through, you reviewed it, you know the information that they're asking for, and you're going to have to provide different pieces of information. So gather your documents. They're most likely going to want your budget, your mission statement, any photos or videos that go along with it. Gathering the documents may also mean gathering letters of support from community members, maybe from your city council or your borough assembly, or from other agencies, right? Gather those letters of support. Get those ready for submission for this grant. And any project information that you might not have already. So what's the cost of the project? Well, we're still waiting for the estimates on the cement. We're still waiting on the estimates for this. So gather all that information during this stage where you're about to write the grant. You're gathering that information and you're ready to start sitting down and writing that grant. So let's get to that stage, because that's stage 4. So you've done your research, you know who you're going to apply to, you've reviewed the application several times, you know that you meet the criteria and that you know what's ahead of you, what you're going to have to write about. You've gathered all the documents that you need, and this could, again, these steps may overlap. So you may be waiting for information like letters from somebody or an estimate from a contractor while you go into this stage, which would be write the grant. Writing the grant is obviously, a very important part of grant writing, of getting grants. But it's just as important to do all this prep work ahead of time. False steps here, you could write the best grant, but if you're not applying to the right organization or someone who hasn't donated to a similar organization like yours, then you might be spending all this time writing the grant for nothing. So make sure you do all these prior to writing this grant. Now, what I suggest with grants, because some of them can be really long, they can be multiple pages with 10 questions, right? Break it into chunks. Break it into chunks and give yourself a timeline. Know that you have 6 weeks left at this point to get the grant submitted, and maybe the first 2 weeks you do certain parts, the budget and the project specs or something like that. So break it into little chunks. Usually the grant will give you instructions on how much information they want. They might limit you to 500 words for each question, etc., right? So break it into those chunks and give yourself plenty of time to do the research, write, edit, read it again, mail it out to a friend, email it to a friend to review, or maybe give it to some board members to review, and edit it again. It's always good to have someone else read it out loud to yourself. The thing with grants is when you see these multiple questions, a lot of times these questions sound similar. And so it's pretty easy to kind of write the same answer to each one with slight variations. But be careful, you don't want to be redundant in your answers. There is a difference between questions like how is this, if you're funded, how is it going to serve the community? If you're funded, who in the community will get served? What is the purpose of your project? Excuse me. So those may sound like similar questions, but they're actually very different. And so when you're reading these questions and it sounds like they're similar, read over them. That's back to the review stage of this process. Read over those questions and make sure you understand exactly what the difference is between the questions they're asking, so that your answer is specific towards that question and not a little bit of cut and paste from a similar one. Well, that sounds like my mission, so I'll put that here. There is a difference between your mission and your purpose and who you serve and how you serve them. And those are all questions they may be asking. Once you have each section written out and you've gone and edited it and you've sent it out to friends and they've edited it, or a board member, and they've given you feedback and you've made the adjustments to it and everything's put into place, do one final grammar check. So make sure that your T's are crossed and your apostrophes are there, and etc. So do that final grammar check. Once you're down, after writing the grant, it's time to submit that grant. So submitting a grant is a straightforward process. The hard work has been done, but here's where presentation can take over. I typically will write a cover letter. Dear sir or madam, obviously you're addressing it to a specific person, or most likely you're doing that. So dear sir or madam, encloses our application for the XYZ grant. We're very excited to be applying for this grant and our project, etc., etc. So you write that cover letter, who you are, what's enclosed, and if they have any questions, contact you. And then I would take that grant and I would label everything inside of it. So it's very easy to find section 1 or question 2 or whatever they're asking for, right? And all your attachments, your mission statement, your budget, your project specs, any receipts, letters of support, all of those neatly packed away, paper clipped with a little sticky note or something saying, letters of support, section 3, this is that, right? So be very organized, make it easy for them to find what they're looking for. Don't be afraid to start everything on new pages. So if you have a different question, you can start it on a new page if you like. If it makes it easier to find the information, do it. The last thing they want to see is a 20-page grant that's all strung together without any gaps or headings or spaces or anything like that. Put it together with good presentation and label it. Be careful to follow the instructions as you're doing this, because a lot of times grants will tell you don't use staples or don't attach any paper clips, or vice versa. They may say staple this together, or don't use this envelope, only use black ink, whatever, right? So a lot of times they have very specific criteria that you need to follow. So make sure that as you put this together for submission that you are following all the criteria that they're asking for. And typically I like to send things in a large envelope, so I wouldn't fold it up and put it into a regular business letter size envelope. I would use a full size 8.5 by 11 envelope, stick the application in there, and seal it up for sending. It keeps the presentation nicer. There's no folds in the middle of it. It looks more professional, and it stands out a little more in their mailbox. So even if it's only 2 or 3 pages, I would still go ahead and make a full-size envelope, stick it in there just for presentation's sake. It's just more professional. And then the last stage you want to do here is you want to do your follow-up, right? Obviously, one last thing, you want to submit it on time, right? So make sure that you have a good day, two or week before the deadline for the grant, obviously. Now, follow-up. I don't know if you can hear my dogs howling in the background, but it depends on how good this mic picks up stuff, but they're out there howling. I can hear them. So follow-up. This is your last stage. After that grant is submitted, and you may get an email from them. Thank you, we've received your information, we're processing it, right? That's great. I would still follow up with them. Give them a week or two after you mail it out. Call them up. Check in with them. Make sure that they did receive it if you didn't get a confirmation. Did you get the application? Did you have any questions? I just wanted to touch base with you. I just want to make sure there wasn't anything missing, and make that connection again, right? So that they know you're really interested in making the best grant possible, the best application possible, and you're also making that personal connection with them. So they're getting to know you a little more. They know you're eager and you're excited, and that you're willing to work with them to make it happen. Because there's some granting agencies that will send something back and say, especially if it's before the deadline, we're missing this information, please send this. So when you reach out to them, it makes it easier for them to do that. And after that, I would even follow up with an email. Maybe either immediately or within the next day or two. Thank them for the conversation you had. It was nice talking with them. And here's my email address and my contact information if you have any questions. please do give me a call or email me at this email address, and we're looking forward to working with you, et cetera, et cetera. So I'd follow up in that sense. So that is it. Remember, this is a process. This isn't how to write a grant. It's a whole different set of skills. But knowing where you're at in your grant process, especially if you are writing multiple grants at the same time, knowing which stage you're in the grant process is going to help you meet your deadlines, produce better content, and you're more likely to get the grants that you're applying for. All right, that's it, folks. The 6 steps that I use when I apply for grants, and I hope it's helpful for you. If you want to watch more videos, you can go to nonprofitally.com, and there's a link down below in the description of this video so you can get straight to our website. We have plenty of videos out there on grant writing, on mission statements, on getting your 501c3, charitable nonprofit status, etc. So, and if you like this video and you found it helpful, please subscribe and give us a thumbs up. We'd love to hear from you, so you can leave a comment down there. I usually apply to those as soon as I see that they've appeared. So thanks, folks. Enjoy your day.